All right, guys, welcome back for another PAWCast. Today, we're going to continue our swing over to process, so here we go.
Welcome to the PAWCast.
Felt like a long time.
6 months is a long time.
Yeah. So,
All right, here we are.
6 months is a long
6
time.
times is a long time. Not for us, because time flies when you're working hard.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think today, we've been talking for the last few podcasts that we're trying to make this swing over to process.
Yeah.
Ben, you brought up a pretty good point that, it doesn't necessarily have to be linear. I mean, we can kind of go back and forth because we still do have several things planned. I mean, Dr. Janessa, we got to get in, it's kind of a special guest. There's a new thing that we actually developed that we're referring to as the STAR chart. So I think there are still some things that can be used in the education system, but it all kind of intertwines with one another.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is just one big solution. And that's, I know we've said it on multiple occasions, but it kind of all has to be together for the most part. I mean, you can do some things without the others, but ultimately it's all, you had made it was not a joke, but we think about it jokingly now. It's like, well, where do we start? With everything.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's the spider on the web. Like, you can feel it all, and that actually came up in conversation. I was having a conversation with two people at work the other day, and it was just that. They had asked me, like, how is it that you can actually see all of this stuff intertwined and interconnected? And I'm like, I don't know, it just comes to me. It's like, but the reality is we've 13, 14, 15 years of following the trends and following the patterns of not just successes. And that's why I keep saying, like, I wake up every day a failure.
Yeah.
Like, that's my goal. If I wake up a failure, then I find some way in which I can better myself for that day. So for me, when I've, from the education system to core values and culture and all that kind of stuff, it was basically, like we'd said before, it's just being in work environments where you didn't have those things, or, with like the review system, it was just always run like crap for a few years. And it's like, you just can't, you just have that experience. And I think, I always had ideas as a young veteran, and as a young person, but as a young veterinarian. But I think in some capacity, the inexperienced ideas are almost very narrow scoped. I think it's kind of when we talk about the difference between systems and practical thinking. I think I don't want to say everyone, but as you make a trend through your career and you're learning from mistakes and you're not afraid of mistakes and you can comfortably fail, I think eventually you get over to a systems side. If you have a constant growth mindset, I think you get to a point where you see interconnectivity.
Well, because there's a level of comfortability that's necessary, because to get to that point does require time and patience. Yeah. If you don't have that natural skill set, which most people don't actually have that as a natural skill set. It is something that is trained, because if you think about it from a biological perspective, if you lean just into what is natural, it tends to be very short-minded, right? Because you let the emotional system run amok of your own brain. Yeah. But to be able to get up into the prefrontal cortex and all that, like, we could get into the actual biology of it if you really wanted to, but that does require, it's a muscle. Yeah. When I had originally come on with the consulting stuff and was looking at the dimensions of thought, that was the best way that it was ever worded to me, is that all three, between empathy, practical, and systems, can all be flexed. They can all be worked. They can all you can become better at all three of those ways of thinking. However, you need to be of conscious thought to do so. Yeah. Same as you have to be of conscious work to, build muscle. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think you're exactly that short-sighted part to it. Like, I say this in exam rooms a lot of time when I'm looking at a disease that I know is going to be a long-term managed problem. I always say it's about rushing to a stop sign. Yeah. Like, why are you speeding to a stop sign? Like, if you know there's going to be a stop point, or there's going to be, essentially the stop is a barrier, right? So if you're rushing to a barrier, try to figure out a way to overcome that before you get there, if you can see it coming, rather than just saying, well, what I think the example I had this weekend was a really, really poor off respiratory patient. And one of the ways in which you can gauge severity of respiratory disease is through pulse oximetry. Some people are aware of that when you get the little red thing on your finger when you go into the doctor. But the idea is that atmospheric oxygen is about 30%. Our lungs and cardiovascular system and blood is so efficient that we look at 100% concentration of the bloodstream. It's an exponential decline. So the drop from 100 to 90 is not the same as 90 to 80. It's an exponential decline, not linear. But anyway, so I tell people 92 is our number, right? So basically what it had come down to was saying that if we have a patient coming in the mid to high 70s, we can't think about necessarily how in this 5 minutes or how in this 5 hours am I going to get this patient from the 70s to the 90s, because that was the whole talk, because the people were in triage for probably about 4 hours. Well, what is it now? Is 75? Is it 79 now? That means it's getting better. It's 76. I'm sorry. It's 86. Now it's 83. And I'm like, hold on a second here. We're looking at just the practical numbers. We're not talking about how we got here. If we get to the 90s, how are you going to stop or prevent from even coming back? What's the long-term management? So like you said, it's that flex, and saying like you have these very short-term rush to the stop sign. Let's rush to this number. Let's get this one value better. But it's like, well, what are you going to do with the road after you get past the stop sign? How much more distance is there? So it's kind of the same thing. We start to look at all of this and the interconnectivity of all these different things. You're exactly right. It's just a flex. It's saying, well, are you thinking about just the day-to-day, and can you get out of the day-to-day? And that's where, as we kind of lead into this particular podcast, when we're kind of making that transition over to process, it's our 4 big points on, is it short-term or is it long-term thought? And basically our variables here are going to be quantity. So in our cases, it's quantity of cases or quantity of invoices, quantity of patients, to then the quality of care. So quality is just how good are we doing, or the success, like the cases that are supposed to be successes, are they successful? I think is probably the best way of looking at quality. And then certainly then just availability when you're there to exercise quality or quantity, and then the affordability. So that's going to be kind of the main topic today, is quantity, quality, availability, and affordability. And that's where, again, like I said, to look at this interconnectivity basically boils down to is, can you see all the players?
Right. And we've kind of already talked about some of this stuff, because we've referred to the high quantity, low quality, and high quality, low quantity practice as kind of the two stalwarts in the industry.
The two opposite.
Right?
Those polar opposites.
Where and you're catering in both of those type of business constructions as like your top 20% and probably your bottom 40, roughly. But both of those freely exist in the marketplace as a general rule. There are ones that do operate outside of that, but generally speaking, like if you look at a top bottom practice, it's going to be low quantity and then pushing towards high quality, and then vice versa with the fixes ins and all that sort of stuff, or just putting out the bulk load.
Getting out the numbers.
Again, kind of getting into the same place as from a numbers perspective at the end of the day, but different ways of getting there. So
as far as revenue generated for the business or the practice, it's many roads lead to Rome. They're all roads lead to Rome.
But with that, one of the things that we were kind of developing the middle structure here is like, well, we have to actually do both. Is to maintain quality, but also to increase quantity, because this is the thing that is typically one of the biggest barriers in the profession as a whole, is clinics not being able to handle quantity. I know we've talked about it a few different times, but basically they get stuck in their schedule for many and various reasons.
Sure. Appointments or whatever it is, blocks, however they do it.
But that being one of the biggest barriers, one of their biggest stopping points from an industry-wide type of rule of thumb. And for us, it's like, well, we just don't say no. Right. Yeah.
And I think actually, I kind of get these little clips from Gary Vee every once in a while, but one of them was, he was talking about how 7-Eleven is dead. They just don't know it yet. And when you, and again, you guys can look it up, and if we can find it, even
I'll link it.
Yeah. But basically, the idea is that idea of going into a convenience store like that, especially with between Amazon and digitization and next day shipment and so on, so we're getting to a point where the need to actually go into a small convenience store like that is dead. Yeah. Now, not today.
Yeah.
Probably in 15 years.
Yeah.
So for him, he's like, anybody who's considering the convenience store business at this point, just plan for what your business is going to be in 15 years and start it right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if he said it in those words, but it was basically, that was the context, is assume that is dead. That's my exact feeling on day practice.
Yeah.
When we have students, through the university or shadows or whatever it is, it's like, well, I'm interested in general medicine. Hold on here. What you think is probably general medicine or day practice, assume that is dead. You just don't know it yet. And a lot of the people in that setting don't actually know that it's dead. Mm-hmm. And that's when we kind of talk about the three roads. We talk about tradition, corporate practice, and then what we're doing as PAW. And when we start to look at saying, if it like you had said just a moment ago, the idea of being locked or having a schedule where that schedule is based on appointments is dead. Mm-hmm. Our profession can't support it, and it won't support it forever. Mm-hmm. Those clinics are essentially going to fade out because the interconnectivity between appointment slots is public relations, customer service, quality, those types of things. I had to drive the point, one of the online forums I was reading, this kind of comes up every once in a while, where a veterinarian had a full appointment slot for the day. Very common for all of our colleagues, right? Yep. Full appointments, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they have a system where if you come in with same day sick, right? So we have our normal appointment, which, whatever their thing was, it was maybe $80 something for the medical appointments. And they're like, but if it's same day sick and they have to adjust their schedule, there was another $100 emergency exam fee. Mm-hmm. And basically that had transpired, everything completed, transaction completed, patient went home, whatever it is. And this veterinarian was posting on this particular group saying, I can't believe this client is speaking ill of me on social media. It basically had sent this letter to the practice saying, how dare you guys, I've come there for the last 15 years with my patients, and I'm there routinely. I have my appointments, and when I'm sick, I get charged an extra $100. And mm-hmm. It was basically the customer service side, right? Yeah. And just saying, like, why is it that we have to pay more? And the veterinarian, because basically the veterinarian had posted the screenshots of the chat, trying to validate themselves. And basically the argument was, the veterinarian saying, well, don't you know that most of my colleagues are considering suicide, and don't you know that I have a high student debt load, and it was basically in a certain respect, it was a victimization mindset.
Right.
Look at all of these things that are affecting me negatively in my life, and you need to feel bad for me. All of the things that the veterinarian had said in that slot had nothing to do with why they were actually charging an extra $100 for a same-day sick patient. Yeah. It was just, how dare you talk to me about money? Yeah. And I think that's where, when we start to get into these things of saying, well, you guys are in it for the money, and you're just there for the money, it's like, well, it's kind of an ironic conversation, because on one hand, you have the individual as a client saying, you guys are in it for the money. And then the veterinarian's like, well, if you didn't care about money, it wouldn't be about the money. You're the one who's making it about the money. We're here to provide a service, and service is, here to be paid for. So for me, it's like, I think that system is broken. Mm-hmm. That system should no longer exist. Yeah. The system where we should have these blocked appointments and anyone else who disrupts the day is then somehow disparaged. Mm-hmm. That's why your traditional day practice is dead, is because when we start, and they don't know it yet, it's because it all comes back to disparagement, is that the appointment slots and the block appointments, these 20-minute appointments, is an opportunity for us to disparage our clientele. And it's an opportunity for us to not serve the patient. Because if we say that we're going to upcharge $100 for same-day sick appointments when you're already in the clinic, we're not talking about 3 a.m. calls, right? We're talking about you're already in the clinic, have the availability to see appointments. So you're there, you are available, but you are now making your service unaffordable. Mm-hmm. I would rather take that $100 that they would have spent on the exam fee, put it towards blood work, put it towards x-rays, put it towards some other thing, is you have just now limited your ability to actually treat this patient and or diagnose this patient because you have this policy, because you're locked into block scheduling.
Right.
That's why the profession is dying. Mm-hmm. So if we look at, for us, I mean, it's $75, 2 a.m., 2 p.m., it doesn't matter. You can come in whenever you want. It's $75 for our medical appointment, $65 for surgical appointments. So, and that's where when we say we start to look at the way in which we are not able to handle quantity, it's because we're locked into this old scheduling system.
I was going to say, you just knocked off all four, right?
Yes.
So you're decreasing quantity because you're deterring people away. When they show up, you're decreasing quality because you're absorbing funds for absolutely no reason.
Correct.
You're becoming less available and you're becoming less affordable. You just boom, all four, just because of a scheduling thing.
Because of the computer system.
Right.
Because policy.
It's the perception that the idea of an appointment only system to me just is in a direct attack to a growth mindset.
Yes.
Because it's like, no, I have to abide by this system, therefore I can't grow outside of it.
Yes.
And with that, you're eliminating, not even just disregarding, but eliminating entirely opportunity to do your job and do your job better.
Yeah. The computer system and the schedules. I don't want to say just the computers are the fault, because I mean, AI technology is a different conversation. But for
we're not right there.
We're not there. For the computer system and for the scheduling policies, we'll say. So the computer system is just a vehicle for the scheduling policies. Exactly that. Is that the policies are both the rescuer and the persecutor.
Yeah.
It's, we can't do anything more because this system is limiting our ability to do it. And we can't do more because that's our scheduling policy. But it's also going to rescue me from actually having to see more cases today.
Right.
Because in the end, I'm still a victim to this process, and everyone's a victim to the process. The medical team is a victim to the process. And that's where I said it's intertwined into public relations and, all these different parts to it, because it basically just gives you the opportunity for, like you said, to fail on pretty much all four.
Right. So then taking that, then you kind of turn it on its head, right? Just as one key variable within that. It's like, okay, well, we see this as a direct attack to the four variables that we want to improve on a day-to-day basis. So how do we do that? Well, we've essentially eliminated it.
Yeah, entirely.
Entirely. And we still do, within our triage order, have pre-scheduled appointments.
Yes.
But, when I'm taking those phone calls or have those people in front of me, it's like, you're still subject to a triage order. I just want you to be aware of that.
Yeah. And that honestly for us is a growing pain.
Yeah.
So for us to go from being, exclusively emergency to then integrating in any type of walk-in care, and then kind of flipping over to integrating wellness into that, and long-term ailment management as well, integrating that into our standard schedule. It's space.
Yep.
So can you have enough staff? Can you have enough doctors? Can you have enough appointments, exam rooms, which we call education rooms? Do you have enough triage area to actually handle these patients, to store these patients? So for us, ideally, what you would end up running at the end goal, that's why I said it's a growing pain for us currently to stick ailment and wellness into the triage order. Long-term plan is, no, you basically start to run these separate services. Yeah. So you then start, it's like we would expect on the human side. You have one facility where, these doctors are dedicated to those pre-scheduled appointments, pre-scheduled wellness. We have whole teams dedicated as certified technicians and medical support staff. My ideal setting is one veterinarian with 3 certified or veterinary nurses and 3 medical support. This is not including clerical staff. This is just one veterinarian directing 6 people right under them. That's an ideal way to run wellness. That's an ideal way to run outpatient walk-in, and then same thing from a dental standpoint. Dental needs to be its own service entirely. We have one veterinarian and 6 people under them, from induction to recovery to cleanings to, all that stuff. So 1 to 6 for me, not including clerical staff. So 1 to 6 for me is sort of that ideal team. You're exactly right. Currently, it's a growing pain. Currently, it's a temporary problem in saying we just have to try to make sure you coming in, you're aware that some of the things today on the walk-in basis are a little bit more severe than your pre-scheduled recheck ears. Right.
And with all of that, too, the thing that I think I really like about our team and the way that we communicate and the way that we take these problems is it's not like we see the fact that there is a growing pain included in that, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the mindset that's like, I don't want to realize that pain, therefore I'm going to maintain. It's like, no, we're gonna muscle into it a little bit and then see where we are. I was actually watching a YouTube video yesterday. It was Jordan Peterson just doing a seminar or something like that, and he was talking about the idea that you can understand a set of variables where you are today. However, if you engage any one of those variables, the way that you are going to perceive them tomorrow is going to be different. So don't assume that you have the right answer. Just go out and try, because anything that's worth doing is worth doing poorly. And that has been the pain, right? It is actually implementing our triage order at 100% effectiveness on a consistent basis. That's the pain. How do we do that? How do we have the right people here at the right times and all that sort of stuff? It's not that it's the wrong desire to fully implement. It's just the how.
Exactly. And that I think you're exactly right. So when we start to talk about, let's just focus, let's take that as a segue into just availability and affordability. We will leave quantity and quality alone for just a moment. But we're going to talk just on maybe not even affordability, just friggin' availability. And I think that's one of the key points here is it's like, if you have, like for me, an ideal basically wellness team is you have a doctor with 6 support staff, not including clerical staff. We're talking medical staff alone. And they are running 3 12-hour shifts a week. And in those 12-hour shifts, only 10 of them are seeing appointments. So in a 12-hour day, you're only working 10 hours. So in that 10 hours, you can, you have an additional 2 hours to either get your charts done or to, give a little bit more time to a case that might need it, or eat. Yes. Just take a moment. But you always guarantee to have 4 days off per week if you're just working 3s. Now, basically you run 2 of those teams. So one for 3 days, the next team for 3 days. So in a 6-day work week. And basically what, to then say, all right, how are we going to find the veterinarian who's going to work 3 12s, and how are we going to then find the support staff, 6 support staff members per veterinarian to work 3 12s, simply because we're trying to be available for the clientele who needs our help, because the majority of people, like it or not, post 2008 to 2010, most people can't take time off work, especially not to go in for shots on their dog. And that's where, when you look at Walmart is going to kick out 100 veterinary clinics in the next 5 years.
Walmart?
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
No.
Yes, Walmart has a plan of putting 100 veterinary clinics into Walmart's, or at least adjacent to it, in the next 5 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So thinking about that from a, I guess from an availability standpoint, if these are simply vaccine clinics, right? Well, sure. They have the pockets to just throw money at veterinarians and technicians. That's, again, maybe 200 veterinarians and, 600 support staff, nationwide. Oh, yeah, they'd pay that money 7 times just to run out vaccines all day. So, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with running out vaccines all day. Wellness is incredibly important, but I'm just saying they're capitalizing and sort of monetizing this idea that how do you find these people and how do you get them to work and how do you get them to see these appointments, simply because they're trying to play the availability game. They're just there. They're there when people need them. They're there after work. And that's why, again, I come back to saying that day practice is dead. They might just not know it yet. Is that the 9 to 5 is dead. The 8 to 4 is dead.
And that's not just veterinary clinics. What is the most frustrating thing for most people is when the bank closes at 4:30 on Friday. Come on.
I literally just said last week, I said banker's hours.
Yes.
I was like, that's an actual banker's hours, because that's their banking hours,
Which is ridiculous.
Yes, it's done.
It's done.
It's done.
Yeah.
And that's where, when we start to look at saying, if we can plan for the business that we need to have in 10 to 15 years and do it right now, then we're going to be so far ahead of the curve. But if we're saying that the scheduling policies is one particular barrier, to kind of, and saying that's just how many block and how many appointments we're going to see today, the next is then that availability barrier. I'm only going to work until 5. But I can almost guarantee you, without being somewhat liable, but I can almost guarantee you that if you have a clinic that runs basically 312s, you're going to see an incredible amount of clientele after 4 o'clock. I mean, we have on, just for us being open 24 hours, we see that cycle.
The phone goes nuts at 4:30
every day,
every single day, regardless of day of the week, time of year.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
And it's ironic because it's at our shift change,
of course.
So it's like whoever's coming in up front at 4 o'clock, it's just like ring, 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 ring. Right. It's just you're just getting
trying
hit.
to get through rounds, and it's like, damn it, phone.
Yep. It's absolutely just it is a guaranteed rule that that's going to be realized.
Yeah. And even if it's a 10 to 10, like, I mean, that is, as far as I'm concerned, any extended hours, not 24 hours, but an extended hours practice, a 10 to 10, 3 days a week, a 10 to 10, 4 days a week, that there's an amazing amount of potential in there from a business standpoint, simply because you're available.
Right.
You
right.
know,
don't change anything besides just being more available.
Yes. But then it comes back down to how we got onto this is how do you find those people? And I think that's when we start to look at this kind of traditional idea day practice. I don't think as a profession we are yet willing to accept that the profession is dead and that we need to move on to the next thing. Because I mean, it's not like death is always fast. Sometimes it's really slow and painful, but if we accept that, nope, this traditional route is done. The corporate route should really honestly never have existed in our profession, and it will continue to kill our colleagues if corporate medicine is the only other alternative. So when we look at sort of the PAW way and saying like, no, if you just accept, again, what is on our industry overview, but the interconnectedness of all these problems, we can, and solutions, I guess, as well, is we can start to chunk out any one of these pieces and become successful.
Right.
It has significantly improved now the quality. When I was going through school, I think I was telling you this just a little while ago, when I was going through school, there was a big taught of Marriott practice. Marriott practice was like the term that was, that was really big into the early 2000s. And it was basically the idea of a top bonded practice where high expenses was then going to be connected to a high perception of value.
Right.
So it was just the idea that if you charge more for your services, people will assume you are doing a better job. Now, again, there's kind of a break point on that. It can't be, 20 times your competition, but we're saying that, and we see that here in our referring district. We have some clinics where there's one where it's kind of that same idea where like their same day sick appointments, I think, are like $125 or something like that. Yeah, it's somewhere in there once you can figure all their different add-ons and everything. Even from what we see when those cases are referred to us from a medical workup, diagnostically to treatments to so on and so forth, we look through it and it's like, man, this was actually really not that good a quality work. It wasn't bad, but it was like, man, they spent a lot of these people's money and it just, there wasn't a ton of value there. But the clients and the clientele who come from these one or two practices that I'm referring to, a high amount of dedication to the practice.
Right.
Like in their brain, they actually believe, well, I spent this much on care, which means I got so much value for my money on that.
Right.
And then it's like us looking from the inside out. It's like, ooh, I could have spent at least $300 of that dollars a different way that actually would have served your patient.
But that's the curiosity about value.
Yes.
Is it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yes. It's like artwork, right?
Yeah.
It's as much as you'll pay for it. Yeah.
So like with that one, I actually know an individual or a couple of individuals that came from there and then realized that they were just getting railroaded. And because they ended up on a wellness plan for a couple of their patients and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, how do you like this? Like, what was your experience?
Feedback?
It's brand new. Tell me what your thoughts are. And they're like, well, these tech appointments for the boosters that we're here to receive, well, they cost 3 times as much for each one of our patients.
Yeah.
At the previous place that we were doing this at.
We charged $15.
Yeah, so they were $45 a piece and they had 4 patients.
Yeah, $45 per patient per tech appointment.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
So they were dropping $180 walking in the door for boosters.
Sure. Not including
the boosters.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's something.
Right.
And I understand that there's time and all that, but like you know, they were like, yeah, we really were like, you know, these high quality techs, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. We really thought it was something. Then it's like, well, we got here, and then it's like the same, if not better. And it's like, because I think they came in the first time on a sick patient.
They did. Yeah, I think I know who you're referring to. Yeah, they did.
And then that had come up, and they're like, well, you know, we might as well take a peek at it.
Yeah.
And it was weirdly like, because I think it was the first time I ever asked somebody their feedback on a wellness plan too, right? And it was like, wow, that was really well timed.
Yeah, right.
But that perception of value is like, you know, I have my watch. I don't know how much my watch costs because it was a gift, but like it's not a Rolex.
Yeah, right.
But it still tells time.
Right.
And there's a weird thing again, kind of going into the natural creation of a hierarchy. I think that's really what it plays into, right? It's like, well, I'm better than this caregiver.
Yes.
I feel more superior because my wallet can float this better than them, and I'm giving better care or best care to my dog or cat, and this person isn't.
Oh, no, I thought you about it. I had a client like that, didn't I?
It was multiple.
Well, yeah. But no, it was this elderly lady. She was like probably in her early 80s, and she had basically said to me, she's like, I have the money to pay for all of the services today, so I expect a higher quality than anyone else who's here.
Right.
I think I talked about that in a previous podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, tough part is everyone's treated as equals regardless of how much money you have.
Yeah.
But in any event,
and those actually turn into some of the more difficult consultations that you have.
Yeah.
Not even the ones that they don't say that, but like. I know that I've walked into treatment and I've said, hey guys, like, you know, kind of, you might have to walk on eggshells with this one a little bit because their bond spectrum from a financial perspective is higher. So their expectations compared to most everybody else that's here is different. Yeah. And
it's the weight you get to throw when you have money, right? You know,
right.
Or at least the perception of
which is funny because in our building means almost nothing.
Yeah, practically nothing.
Yeah.
Because we're still going to do our jobs appropriately. Whether we have $100 or $100,000, we're still going to be touching on informed consent. We're still going to be trying to figure out the most effective way to serve your patient. We're still going to be trying to educate you as best as we can because we're not rushing to the stop sign. We're saying there is a stop sign ahead of us. Let's get to it and figure out what we're going to do on the further road as we go, regardless.
Yeah.
You know, so it's equality. You know, across the board.
And I actually had that conversation with an individual who was on the other side of that spectrum just a couple days ago, where he was like, you know, he had a patient that he wasn't really sure if it was sick or not, and it had been recently, like one of its, they had another one that had recently passed away. It was just like, I'm just worried, but I don't really have a whole lot of money. I was like, well, we'll start with this exam and consultation portion. We'll tell you everything that's potentially in front of you here, and it's going to be a very, very guided based on exam and patient history acquisition, because that's going to be all included in it. And from there, like, you can stop at that point. If that's all you can handle and all you need is information so you can go home and make an educated decision beyond just like you knowing what this process is, you're more than welcome and absolutely able to do that. And he was like relieved. Where it was like, well, I don't know specifically what I'm going to do as the end of this phone call comes around, but it's like, yeah, man, like, come on in. Like at any point, just like, we'll start there and allow you the ability to make an educated decision, because I can't triage your patient over the phone.
Correct.
I cannot do it. And we can talk about the poor implementation of that idea all probably for the next 8 to 12 hours if we really wanted to. But it was the relief of him not only knowing the availability side, where it's like, no, absolutely, come on in. I'm not going to charge you anything extra just because you're just calling me right now and wanting to show up in 10 minutes. But also on the affordability side, like, we're pushing really, really hard to make all of these things as affordable as possible.
Absolutely.
Within reason, right? Like, everything
we're
does
not giving it away, but
no,
it's,
and that's, but again, it is available and in front of you, and it's on an educated decision-making basis. It's not just arbitrary labs that we think everyone should get. Like, you know,
the quote-unquote minimum database, as it were.
Right.
Which again is it's technically part of informed consent to at least discuss the minimum database.
Right, but not every patient that rolls in the door is automatically getting a Chem 6.
Correct.
Like, even though it's very baseline and would provide more valuable information and is not terribly expensive, we still don't do it. Like, there's no.
If you can't justify it, you know, and that's I think what I said, that Caroline's the one before, where I was like, you know, you have 3 rule outs in one test.
Yeah.
You know, so it's part of that conversation point. And sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off. You know, right. I mean, you just, again, some of it's that guesswork involved.
But with all of that comes quality.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So then creating that, with the thing that we had talked about a lot with Caroline was creating value.
Yeah.
Well, that's where quality is perceived.
Yeah.
Is in the cases that should be successes.
Yes.
Is making sure that you get to the ability to create success, and then ultimately realizing it. And I specifically separate those two things because your ability to communicate as one person to another person is a potential barrier to the realization of actual patient care success.
Correct.
So you have to be good on both sides, and that's again why we have that informed consent process, and not limiting availability also, because because I think ultimately at the end of the day, when you look at quantity, availability, affordability, our goal is quality.
Right.
It is to see it on a high quantity basis and to continue to be able to have a system that can handle high quantity.
Yeah.
But the last thing that we want to see go down is quality.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that's, we can actually convert one of our drawings over, but you're exactly right. Like our goal is, I mean, and again, guys, I'll have this chart up there, but it's basically between quality and quantity. It's the y-axis and the x-axis, so vertical and the horizontal axis for Ben.
Jackass.
You know, as if we look at, you know, quantity on the horizontal plane and then quality on the vertical plane, is like if you are in a setting where you have both a low quantity and low quality practice setting where it's like you just aren't doing great at either, you don't have a lot of business, and the business you're doing just isn't that effective or successful, the natural trend immediately is don't increase in quantity. Don't do anything that's going to affect the number of cases you're going to see, because it's just going to make every hour that much more difficult if you just don't have good quality care. And again, some of the quality again can be defined as, you know, ability to diagnose, ability to treat, successful diagnoses, successful treatments. I mean, PR, customer service.
Right. I was going to say quality can be defined
so many different ways. Yeah. So if you were saying that the first thing you have to do in a low quantity, low quality practice is get it up to a same quantity, higher quality, that's the first benchmark. Get your quality up.
Right.
But then what happens, even if you have $0 in your advertising budget, nobody has an advertising budget, and you don't put any money into it, and now your quality goes up, you're going to increase quantity. It's just what's going to happen. Word of mouth does work. So when you look at that and then saying, well, you have basically 4 tracks, essentially, like the ideal circumstance is when you go from low quantity up to high quality, same quantity, you want to just go completely horizontal plane. You want to maintain that quality and just increase on quantity, so you don't have any drop in quality at all. Well, that's not realistic.
It's right. It's damn near impossible.
It's the mark to hit, but it's not going to happen.
Right.
So what you have to accept then is saying, okay, remember I wake up every day as a failure. So if I understand that I'm going from a low quantity, low quality practice, and I'm just going to jump up the quality, we're just going to do a better job. And then as we start to increase in quantity, accepting the fact that you have already failed on quality, that you're going to have a drop in quality as quantity goes up, try to mitigate that. So what quality are we accepting? So one of the things we just actually got back from one of the referring veterinarians in the area was the quality of our medical record system. So it was a matter of continuity of drugs administered to, what was actually discussed from an informed consent standpoint. I think one of the points of contention were whether or not we were sending records over to say a patient had been euthanized, and then they would call back to see how the patient was doing, but it was euthanized. And it was kind
clerical process.
Yes, clerical process. Yep. So saying, by that definition, yes, our operations have come down, our clarity in our paperwork has come down, and I see that as being an acceptable amount of drop in quality. because the quality of our care did not change.
Right.
It was just the clarity by which we were able to give that information out. And that then touches on so many different things. What's the veterinarian's computer literacy, understanding, not even just computer literacy, but understanding of current management software, if it's different than something they had used in the past. So that's why when we say that quality is going to drop, you just have to focus on which quality variables is most important. And for us, it's
serve the patient.
Serve the patient.
It all comes right back to that one.
Yes. So that's where, when you look at the chart, it's saying you're going to have several things dropping off. And when you say that you go up on quality, and let's say your quality goes up and your quantity changes a very small amount and quality just hits the fucking floor again. It's like, well, why did quality drop so hard on clarity of process to way in which we serve, way in which we educate, so you can take those variables. But then if you start to anticipate some of these before you even have a drop in quality, if you anticipate some of these variables are going to go down, you start to slow that trend. Then we find what is ultimately the break point in process. And that's where for some people it's just a little bit increase in quality. But what we've been doing over the last several years of ownership is, and it's rather fortuitous, but I said that 2019 to 2020 was going to be our break year. So between last year and this year, it was, if we, starting out in 2015, we have less than 4 years to fix process, to maintain quality, and then expect we're going to have a significant jump in quantity. And I think you have the numbers even from 2018 to 2019, was it a 28% growth?
26.6% in just caseload. Between 2018 to 2019, and between 2017 to 2019, it was almost 100%.
Yes, 100% increase in quantity from 17 to
in 2 years.
Essentially. Oh, okay. In that 2 year span. Yeah. So huge influx.
We doubled in 2 years just in caseload alone.
Yes. So looking at now, last year we closed about.
Stress the hell out of our process.
Yeah, the whole process. And that was where we had worked on process, knowing that it was going to fail. Like, that's why I always say I make rules with the intent of breaking them. Like, It's just this process. I understand that quality is going to come down with quantity. That's the whole idea in stressing the system. Is of the 99,447 cases that we saw in 2019, we had less than 12 complaints.
Right.
So now, again, that's ones that have come to us formally. Maybe there's people who said stuff and there's just a sly comment online or some shit. Yeah,
it's 50.
Right.
Out of almost 10,000.
Right. Yeah, it's not even 1%.
Right.
It's less. It's like 0.1. It's a significantly few. So for us to say that we're seeing almost 10K in cases, and we don't even have a fraction of a percent of drop in quality, at that point for me it kind of becomes semantics and saying like, well, so we get this negative feedback from a referring veterinarian saying, your paperwork's not clear. With these 3 doctors we're having more problems than we're having with those 3 doctors, and some of it has to do with medical, some of it has to do with clerical. It's like, no, I get that. This is always an opportunity for us to take that feedback and for us to grow, but it's not a crippling amount of feedback.
Right. It's not stopping us in our tracks.
Correct.
For another example that's similar to that, but from a different source, is we have our Rapport, our appointment management system, right? Yep. Well, part of that is when we have emails, we do get review requests directly through there.
Every single appointment, and then also, what's the one that Rachel does?
Womply.
Yeah.
So we have two review request systems that are
one by
engaging
email,
caregivers.
One by phone, right?
Yeah, they're both engaging caregivers on feedback. So positive, negative, whatever. Like, here's your platform. Right. Let us know.
Get it back.
And recently, the Rapport one, which is the email one, had come over kind of towards my responsibility and just managing that. Sure. And like, for me, the guy who's a 99i experience creator, and like I can handle criticism. However, like for me, it's like, oh my God, I need to fix this. Yeah. Because it's just the exposure, and it's like these little just minutia. Yeah. And it's like, I absolutely want to improve all of these things. Yeah. However, still in the back of my head, it's like, well, I'm prioritizing consistently on serve the patient. Yeah. So like, I absolutely, I want to improve whatever process that is. Yeah. But it may come 5th, 8th, 12th, 100th in the list.
One of my significant barriers as a veterinarian, and I think this actually came up a few podcasts ago. One of my barriers that I know is there is that I focus more on serving the patient than I do caring about the caregiver.
Yeah.
So I understand for me as an individual, that's a barrier. And I think a part of that has to do with empathy, right? And again, it's a muscle I can flex, so I know I'm working on it. I'm better now.
You have it. It exists.
I have it, and it's better now than it has been in years past, because I understand that if we start to create barriers between ourselves and caregivers, then we can no longer serve the patient. So you have to kind of juggle both. But at the end of the day, if I get like a formal complaint from a caregiver and we have to do an administrative review, or we refer to as our patient advocacy process, I really like when everything is just process. Where it's like, I didn't really like that I got a phone call 10 minutes late. I understand. I absolutely understand that it is unacceptable. We say when we have hospitalized patients that we have callback times, and we have an hour window on either side. So really we have a 2-hour gap when we do our phone calls. So we should have ample opportunity to plan for this call. And if we miss that mark, no, I absolutely agree that that was unacceptable, but I'm not going to allow you to disparage me to the point that it's going to affect my self-worth. And I'm not going to allow it to negatively impact the other coworkers that I work with, because it was a process failure. But again, we have our juggling kind of between quantity and quality. And that's where, like I said, I think that's a pretty good mark, in almost 10K cases to not have a ton written. But we, again, like you said, we're willing to accept any feedback and then prioritize the trend.
Right.
It's the same thing with our 515 reports with our staff internally on the education system. Is the 515 reports are, let's look at this stuff every week. Let's get feedback from the staff, and where are we starting to have barriers? Where are we starting to fail? And let's start to address it when it starts to become kind of a really squeaky wheel, But yeah, so anyway, you have that expectation on quality and quantity. That quality is always going to drop when you go up in quantity, so you anticipate for it and you minimize it, and you just mitigate, and then basically plan for it. And then the plan you have for the decrease in quality that you're planning on, institute that solution day one. Assume you have already failed, figure the solution, institute the solution day one, so you're already ahead.
Right. A part of the traction process too is you're kind of talking about the 515 is setting a scorecard. So that actually does that for you, right? So it's not really an aside.
I forgot about the scorecard. I don't think we ever used it.
We don't really use it in house because we actually kind of operate more gut feeling but we also have the advocacy judgment process, and we have our rules as to kind of what everything is. Patient wait times is kind of a good one too, just as a rolling how's the day going for actually this last weekend. I was talking with Dr. Dane about how the day kind of went as I was leaving. He's like, it was okay. Like no one had more than a 1-hour wait, and all of our patients were treated well, and it was a really good Saturday, but it was like, man, we just could have done better. Right.
Get it down to a 45-minute wait time.
Right. Or just, whatever it might be. There was just something about the day, whatever. And with all of that, we have a pretty good understanding of where we are trying to create high quality.
The value.
Where is our value coming from? And then for some people, if you don't have a good understanding of that, just get it all out there. And that's what that scorecard development process kind of is. However, us having a significantly, even if it isn't written down, we have a very good definition of value where we're trying to put it. And a prioritization within that, and again, that has come from many different ways, right? But I know that a big part of it is the fact that we've lived on triage for years.
I think honestly, at the end of the day, if you were going to completely boil down quality to one variable, and if that one variable is going to touch everything, I think it's time. It took too much time to run that diagnostic. I had to send that test out to a reference lab where I could have done that in-house, because our inability. So let's just say one of those clinics you have where they don't have in-house blood work, and they have to send, you bring in a same-day sick cat, run blood work. Well, we're just going to have to wait and then get that result tomorrow. Right. So that time variable, you are no longer able to effectively serve the patient, and you can't educate the caregiver because you're delaying it by a whole day. And then when the next day rolls around, you have a half a dozen diagnostic callbacks on the patients you saw yesterday, which are conflicting with the appointments that you have today. And then that's starting to push off your appointment slot. So just deal with it same day. So time is one significant variable. What's the wait time on a Saturday? And it's, if you guys told me that the wait time was 45 minutes and it actually took an hour before I talked to someone or 90 minutes before I talk to someone. It's like, well, you told me this, and a time element is that. So, but again, I think, we can boil it all down to time, like the scheduled time, right? So, again, so I think if we focus on one of the biggest barriers to quality is our effective use of patient time and caregiver time, I would say that would be one of the biggest ways to increase quality and maintain it.
I would argue, though, and this is me riffing, and it probably is going to go way too far, so I apologize in advance. But time is similar to the amount of money that people spend also. There is a perception of value with the amount of time that they are ultimately given.
Yes.
So if you are super efficient, we've had this actually as a negative and feedback in that this consult, I waited 2 hours, I waited an hour for a 3-minute consultation on a laceration.
Sure.
It's like, well, yeah.
Right.
Because it's like, how did this happen? What happened? All this sort of stuff.
Sew it up and send you home with drugs.
Right. Pretty straightforward. That's why it's a little bit less expensive from an exam and consultation perspective.
It is less. Yep.
All that stuff. But either way, like, not to say that all of those should be 3 minutes or whatever, and I'm not saying that was the right way to handle that one. However, that person that provided that feedback was actually, they felt like they were shorted.
Sure.
Right? Just because of a time element.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that this person didn't sit in front of me for the amount of time that I deemed appropriate without actually communicating it.
Right.
And therefore, I'm going to just, say that it wasn't to the level that I expected, exclusively from a time allocation perspective, which is weird because for us, it's like, well, it was most efficient. We were trying to push push speed, not necessarily, and I should say push efficiency.
Yeah, because if you hit informed consent, right? Like, there's opportunity for questions at every mark and going over discharge meds and when you recheck, and here's some stuff in writing, and here's what's the stuff to look out for, and all those different things. Like, I would just be curious on why 3 minutes versus 13. Like, what the hell would?
But that's the thing is, like, it's kind of an arbitrarily set number by each individual, and it can also be based on how well you communicate. Kind of looking at those two barriers, right? How well are you handling barrier number one to get to the point of getting over actually serving the patient? Like, are you getting to the point where this person is unified on your patient care team and trusting you, so that you can ultimately be accountable to the patient,
collectively,
Mm-hmm. I was actually just thinking about that the other day, and I was like, how do I get this to come up? And it's absolutely that, where there is a weird I always like to think about time as the most valuable resource that anybody has, because it's the only thing you can't get back.
Absolutely.
You make more money,
can't make more time.
You cannot make more time.
No.
So with all of that, it's kind of funny that comes up, but
but no, I think that's and I guess getting back to how we kind of split off on this a little bit was just saying, like, if we're trying to increase availability, we're trying to increase affordability. Like, if you increase availability, so even if you look at the quality and quantity type diagram, there is an availability component to it, and an affordability component to it as well. But I think coming back to it, at least in a circle kind of way, is saying how, not just yes, I want to. It's the how. How is it that we can increase quantity and increase quality both at the same time concurrently, find the people who can actually do that effectively, minimize the number of complaints that we're getting on either process or patient care, but then also have it where the services are completely affordable, and then available 24 hours a day with no uptick charge after hours.
Right.
That's the perfect scenario. And it comes down from training of personnel to having the education system to make sure that they are being accountable to their own learning in that whole process. And I think, Annie even went as far as to even teach triage. Like, we're developing, or she is more than we, but developing a triage game, as an exercise for us to try to say, hey, we have, these 15 different appointments, and there's all these different players between the medical support and caregiver support and all that. But when we look at the how, it's incredible incredibly multifaceted.
Yeah.
So you have to look at these as being growing pains, you know, having that growth mindset and not allowing the failures to essentially set back that growth.
Yeah.
It's just another opportunity to grow.
It's got to be actually my favorite part about training people, because I was actually recently with the new hire, was doing that just the other day, and I was like, we're gonna flip through this 80-page book of stuff that we expect you to do and to do well, and understanding that this book is here for when you forget, because you're gonna forget.
Yep.
Like it takes a long time to absorb this information, and it changes and all that sort of stuff. And I looked right at her. I was like, and you're going to fail. One of my favorite ones is isolation protocol, right? Because like everyone screws up ISO once.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just warning you that it's okay. Like you're more than allowed to fail. Don't do that one twice in the same day, preferably, because you're not going to like it.
If you have an unvaccinated puppy blowing bloody diarrhea all over the lobby, you get one.
You get one. You get one. Yeah. But it was funny because, you know, she's, I mean, at that point, total hours exposure to our clinic was less than 24.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're gonna screw up, and I'm okay with it as long as you're okay with it.
Right.
Like, we're gonna see the fact that you like. I can predict your mistakes, hence an 80-page book.
Right.
And we can do our best, but at the end of the day, you're gonna screw it up. And I mean,
that's what you just said. Like, I'm okay with it, and you have to be okay with it.
Right.
That's the whole part, though, is that if you don't have that mindset where the barrier is you're in an environment where it's not okay to fail, or the barrier is you as an individual in your own brain space can't fail, then this isn't going to work.
Right.
Because we've already planned that we're going to wake up today and I'm already a failure.
Right.
You know, it's not self-hating and self-flagellation. It's no, it's just I can do better today.
Right. I was having that thought yesterday. It was like, yes, I'm better today than I was yesterday, and I'm going to be better tomorrow.
Yes.
Like I just have to wake up today and be like, how am I going to be better tomorrow? And how am I going to get there? In one way, shape, or form, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and something.
Right.
It could be something completely arbitrary.
But a big part of that, too, comes with the fact that it's like, maybe it's just my own internal drive to push more towards quality, right? Or to push towards quantity, to believe in everything that's in front of us here, to ultimately serve the patient is the perception of value in the time, in the way that I'm spending my time. Because again, ultimately, the only thing I can't get back is time. Am I spending it well? And you know, for some people, doesn't really fit. Right.
Yeah.
And I can be empathetic towards it. I don't understand it, and I don't agree with it. But the idea of, you know, if you have the mindset where what you're doing today has no value, do something different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't even fucking compute with me.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even.
But it's a very real problem, and I think you know, when we had talked about the people that left for Quick Trip, right?
Quick Trip. Yeah.
Like they had zero perception of value in anything that they were doing. Yeah. So looking 10 years out, as a rule, like I'm not expecting anybody to have the plan to get to the success point 10 years later, because we only have a limited set of variables today. Like understand where you want to go and be willing to adjust, but ultimately know what it is that's valuable to you, and figure out, at least to the best of your ability, how to take the next step towards it so you can see the next stepping stone that's in front of you.
Yeah. And ask if you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a way that we have stressed that system and actually put kind of our people through the fire a little bit. Availability and affordability. Like you're gonna see more of it. You're gonna have higher volume to create high quality, and we're gonna see who falls off. We're gonna see how well you can handle the heat, and that can be tough for some people. And that's the other part of the training thing that I tell people. Even from interview number one, it's like we've talked about it within our education system, tier 0, tier 1, tier 2. You're going to have these jumping off points because you're going to start to realize how hot this fire can get. Right. And if you can't handle it, rather than you just banging your head against a wall and and just thinking that you're providing no value to this system or to yourself, just go find value somewhere else. It's fine. And that's one of my biggest
one of the things that actually frustrates me the most is when in our organization people don't value what their job actually is.
Yeah.
And I still think to this day the caregiver support role is like the highest value position in our practice. Like it's first and last point of contact.
Right.
Like, and even I was talking to Janice about this the other day. I think she was over for dinner or whatever. It was like exactly that. She was like, oh my God. She was like, if we didn't have a competent front end staff, she's like, that would be it.
Yeah.
That would be the end of this practice is
Right.
if we didn't have a competent front end. And then we
Right.
have an
Right.
an
We just
individual.
we have a moment.
Yes. Yeah. We have an individual who's no longer with our organization.
Right.
Who-
Just a lack of competence leading to a lack of perceived value. And ultimately, like being provided the opportunity to succeed,
Yeah,
the
some
opportunity
barrier
to
was there.
fail,
Yeah.
and the opportunity to succeed, and ultimately the barrier was not truly defined. However, it was very realized.
Correct.
And it's like, all right, like you just need to go do something somewhere else because you don't want to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. The break point for me on that individual was hearing that she referred to her job as bitch work.
Yeah.
That was a tough one for me to fucking swallow.
And
I'm still mad about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I get that way, and I understand I need to let things go. That's the release type of forgiveness.
Yes. Yes.
You know, but yeah.
But it's that, kind of looking at some of the other graphs too, right? The major cultural risk.
Huge.
Major, because you think about that concept from an industry-wide perspective, right? If you have that mindset on a pervasive level, as that one was for within a clinic structure, that you have a veterinarian with limited self-worth, a technician who's 5 years into the 7-year exit,
Right.
and a medical support staff person who just feels like they clean shit all day long. And then this person comes in and is even of like a high potential, but just performs like crap because they don't think they have any sort of value. It's like, what is that person going to do from a cultural perspective? It's just going to be that anchor that sinks everybody.
Everyone. Yeah. Who's already probably, everyone else is already teetering at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So
like you can't expect the remainder of the crew to hold you up.
Right.
Like you're too heavy
Right.
for somebody who's on such shaky ground anyways. And one of the things that I think I really want to talk about on here too, and maybe we'll do next week, is the idea of I always call it emotional currency. So basically, I don't think I've ever actually talked to you about this. I know I've talked to Annie about it. The idea that you put in to the group more than you take out. Because if you walk into a scenario with a good attitude and you're trying to put in, you leave your stuff at the door, right? All this, and you're just putting in, you're making the decision like, I'm going to contribute today. You're adding to the middle. Whereas if you walk in with a crap attitude and you're just drawing off of somebody else, like they're only going to receive, they might be putting in and you might be taking out, but the likelihood is you're taking out more, and ultimately everyone goes down. And that's pretty much the whole idea. But
no, I like it.
Realizing it as essentially something like, you put this in today, like you show up, you put in today, that's your value. And the way that you do that on multiple fronts can be very easily realized. However, you have to be ready, willing, and able to do it.
Yeah, and I don't think, honestly, just hearing you kind of talk about that, it won't take long. It won't take long to sort of put positivity or put energy or put some type of support into the group, whether you want like you said, the emotional currency component. Before it just starts to overwhelm, and it starts like your interactions are going to be so much more positive across the board. Like people are going to see you're not taking, they're going to see you're putting, and I think that's with one of our caregiver support. I mean, like with Shelby, when I was telling her, Shelbert, I'm like, it's like, no, just have a high self-worth, have high self-value, understand you're in an environment where we want you to succeed. Like just keep taking that. And she's like, I don't know, I just wish I could. It's like, just fucking try it, like, because as soon as you start to do it, it starts to bleed out. It's, like you said with emotional currency, it's like, if you just come, you check your shit at the door, you come in with positivity and just maintaining positivity, like sure, you can have a bad day. That's fine. We all have bad days, but that's the whole idea of putting in is if you're making a deposit, you can certainly make a withdrawal. You just can't make more withdrawals than you are deposits. But that's where I think you start to look at the trust and unity and so on and so forth is, if you see where someone's continuing to pull away from that energy or from that bank, it's going to affect the core values and the unity of the team, you know, and it's you know, everyone has it bad everywhere, right? If you have the victim mentality, but basically all you're saying is like, just be a creator, just be a coach, be a challenger, be in that empowerment dynamic,
and that's really it. But having, like, I literally wanted to have coins at one point where it's like, just give me the wooden nickel that I'm putting in today, right? Because if you're a consistent one that puts in, like, the day that you are in a crap, like, it's just, it's overwhelming you, and you need to take one out, everyone's gonna look at you, be like, you know what? You go ahead. Today you can have this one, and then tomorrow you're gonna show up and you're probably gonna put it back in. It's
my God! Can we also then just give it to people? It's like the Snickers bar, you know. It's like
you're not you when you're in a crap mood. Here's a wooden nickel.
Yeah. Yes.
But again, the reason that comes up in thinking about failure and quantity and quality is if you have a defined set of variables that create quality, you're pushing systems to increase quantity. And then you have a culture that allows for failure, and you have a set of people because of that are willing to put in and try and become better each day. Like, ultimately, it's all going to breed right back to increased quality. Right? And then over time, as you said, as quality increases, it doesn't matter how much you market, quantity is going to increase.
It's going to happen.
I.e. us. How much marketing happened in the last 3 years? Very, very limited amounts.
Limited.
Very limited. And it's just in 2 years of two times over growth in exclusively caseload.
So I think even that, I mean, even for us to be at 9, like, I think when we took over in 2015, like, I think we were at like maybe 2.5, 3. I don't know.
You know, it was 4,500 2 years ago.
I feel like it was like 10 a day or something. That was in the full 24 hours. It was 10. Well, at that time it was nights and weekends, but
still, that's a significant increase with zero marketing. Because it was quality first. All right, available, affordable, culture push, which is why we've spent hours and hours and hours on culture. And then you start to look at some of the mechanics to make that happen even better from an affordability perspective, which we'll talk about more within process. And like all of this stuff, and that's why the understanding of the interconnectivity of all of these things is so important. Because if you're missing on one of those, it's same as our core values and having the 4. Like, if you're missing on one, it's going to detract from all other components that are in that system. So, yes, go out and try. Yes, try the next thing. Yes, continue to improve. However, realize that you're going to fail, and you're going to see where the other, you know, like metaphorically, the ship's gonna pop holes. Like, are you gonna fix the hole, or are you gonna put the bubble gum in it? Right. And for us, it's like, okay, repair it and just and just be on the lookout for the next one. See your stress points. Try to get in front of it.
Industry as a whole, we're just bailing water.
We're not bailing
even
water,
fixing the holes. We're just bailing it.
Well, exactly. Right. And that doesn't work.
No.
And that's, the industry's dead. Right. The industry's sinking.
It is.
Right.
No one's moving west. All the ships are sinking.
We could talk about all the metaphors.
On fire. The tornadoes running. It's all those. But I think, at least to kind of wrap things up a bit, that's it. That's the story. Is that the kind of the break points of quantity and quality and availability and affordability. I mean, I think this being probably one of our better transition type podcast to get over into process is it's a lot of this. It's how are we focusing on availability? How are we staffing availability? How are we not getting burnt out on availability? And how are we staffing quantity and not getting burnt out on quantity or getting burnt out on quality? Affordability is very mechanical as well. But again, affordability bleeds out into customer service. Just like how we started this conversation. It's like, why are you kicking out an extra $100 for an exam on a patient that you're already in the clinic for. Again, 3 a.m. it makes sense. If I'm getting my ass out of bed to drive into the clinic, like I'm gonna have to probably charge a bit more because I wasn't already at the clinic. There's travel time. You know, if I have to call a technician in, you know, whatever it is, there
are real expenses.
There are actual expenses there.
Yeah.
Which not to say that there aren't expenses, whatever is in the clinic anyway, but to then somehow disparage because our policy is on schedule.
Yeah.
The system's dead.
Right.
Let it go. Start to embrace a walk-in type, you know, process where you're available, you're affordable, you have good quality, and you can handle the quantity. And that's pretty much it.
And then we can start to talk about how to get people out of these major corporate structures that are living in big cities and why people can't recruit.
Yes. Yes.
But that's for another day.
Right. Yes. So, all right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. I know we are definitely going to elaborate on these topics as we move into the next several months. I mean, even to get into our star chart. I mean, as we move through that, all of this stuff is there. So, all right, guys, thanks for listening.
Take care.